Hello, students. This is Miss Cone here. I hope you're having a great day. Today, we're going to talk about symbolism in part 2 of In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This video is for virtual students, in-person students who are coming to school 2 days a week. We're going to work through this in class, so if you started watching the video, you can stop. We'll work through this together in class. Okay, so as we're moving through this discussion, this video, this lecture today, please answer the questions on the worksheet when prompted. Certainly we will discuss each question after, but I want you to try to call what you know about these things before I actually lecture and discuss about them in this video. All right, so take a minute and answer the question, what is symbolism? All right. Symbolism is the use of objects in a text to signify ideas by giving them some symbolic meaning that are different than what they mean literally. Symbolism can be taken in different forms. Generally, it's an object representing another to give some entirely different meaning to a text that's more deeper and significant. Sometimes an action or an event or a word spoken by someone in a text, by a character in a text, may have symbolic value as well. Symbols do shift meaning sometimes, depending on the context they're used in. So the symbolic meaning of an object or an action is understood by how it's used in the text. Okay. What did symbols do for us as readers? Go ahead and think about that question and jot down some ideas about what do symbols do for us as readers. Honestly, more than anything, they help give us insight sometimes into the characters. And they give depth to help writers develop characters. They also help give readers insight into the theme. Sometimes writers use symbols to get a theme. They help give insight into how the writer views the world, which I would say relates to tone. And they let writers give sort of a double meaning sometimes, one that's literal and one that's figurative. Today, we're really going to focus on how writers use, or how Capote in particular uses a symbol to get at theme. Okay, so take a minute and jot down some examples of some symbols from pieces of literature that you've read and what they symbolize. All right, so here's some very famous examples of symbols in text. The Mockingbird and To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee is really about, Atticus says in some various lines that it's a sin to kill a mockingbird because they don't do anything but sing sweet songs for us, or something along that lines. It's represented in this video clip from the movie version if you want to take a look at it. But the mockingbird represents the innocent. In To Kill a Mockingbird, you could say it gives us insight into the character of Tom Robinson, who is really innocent of killing Mayella Ewell in the book. You could say the Mockingbird gives us insight into Boo Radley, who is taunted by people in the town because he is different, and he hasn't hurt anyone. Neither has Tom Robinson. Okay. The plant in her Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry would also be considered symbolic. Mama, at first, is constantly trying to care for that plant, just as she's trying to care for her children. And the plant, you will see, is in various stages in the play, depending on how well her kids are doing at the time. The Fence and Fences by August Wilson is about both the figurative, the literal and figurative fences and walls we put up and that people put up in their relationships with other people and how that affects their relationships. So the fence and fences is symbolic of the barriers that people build up in the walls, that people build up in their relationships. And then obviously the kite and the kite runner would also be another example of something that, a symbol in something that you've read in your life. All right. So what are some examples of symbolism you observed in part 1 in Cold Blood? And what do you think they might symbolize? What are some objects in the text that you see repeating? Think about that for a minute. All right, so here are some things in part 1 that I always like to point out as symbolic. I don't know if you noticed the smoke. Nancy is talking to Susan on the phone about smoke she keeps smelling, and she wonders if her father is smoking. Perry Smith is constantly smoking. In the case of In Cold Blood, I feel like Truman Capote uses the smoke to kind of foreshadow the Clutter family's death, because Perry Smith smokes, and then Nancy Clutter is constantly smelling the smoke. You've got the birds. There are a lot of different birds in Cold Blood. Pheasants appear a lot in the first section of In Cold Blood. The pheasants that are being hunted, perhaps they represent the Clutter family and them being sort of hunted by Dick and Perry and preyed upon. The color blue is often mentioned in the first part of In Cold Blood. You've got the tattoos. Dick and Perry's tattoos are blue. There are other things that are blue, and you think about the use of the word blue, or the use of the color blue. Colors are traditionally symbolic in text. So, certainly if objects repeat a lot, part of that is a stylistic move on Capote's part, I think, in this text to connect seemingly unconnected parts of the text. For instance, the smoke. Like at this point in time, Perry has never met the Clutters, right? But Nancy's smelling smoke, and he's smoking. Yes, those objects are a way for Capote to connect seemingly unconnected parts. They're also a way to sort of foreshadow. So sometimes, symbols can be used as a stylistic move as well. We're going to examine how here in a passage in a minute from In Cold Blood from part 2, how symbols can be used to help us get at theme and understand character really a little bit better. All right, so we're going to do a close read of Perry's Dream on pages 92 and 93 of In Cold Blood. So why don't you guys go ahead, open your books. I want you to annotate as we're doing this close read together, okay? And then we are going to, you're going to answer the question afterwards that reads, how does Capote use symbolism in the excerpt from pages 92 to 93 in Cold Blood to illustrate a theme in the book? Okay? All right. So what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and do a close read of this. Let me make this just a little bit bigger. And I'm going to show you how I might mark up the text on pages 92 and 93, particularly Perry's Dream. Okay? Here goes. That was a riddle that Perry had pondered. He felt he'd solved it, but in the solution, while simple, was also somewhat hazy. No, because once a thing is set to happen, all you can do is hope it won't, or will, depending. As long as you live, there's always something waiting. And even if it's bad, and you know it's bad, what can you do? You can't stop living. Like my dream. Since I was a kid, I've had this same dream where I'm in Africa, a jungle. I'm moving through the trees toward a tree standing all alone. Jesus, it smells bad, that tree. It kind of makes me sick the way it stinks. Only it's beautiful to look at. It has blue leaves and diamonds hanging everywhere. Diamonds like oranges. That's why I'm there, to pick myself a bushel of diamonds. But I know the minute I try to, minute I reach up, the snake is going to fall on me. A snake that guards the tree. This fat son of a bitch living in the branches. I know this beforehand, see, and Jesus, I don't know how to fight a snake. But I figure, well, I'll take my chances. What it comes down to is, I want the diamonds more than I'm afraid of the snake. So I go to pick one. I have the diamond in my hand. I'm pulling at it when the snake lands on top of me. We wrestle around, but he's a slippery son of a bitch, and I can't get a hold. He's crushing me. You can hear my legs cracking. Now comes the part of it that makes me sweat, even to think about. See, he starts to swallow me. Feet first, like I'm going down in quicksand. Perry hesitated. He could not help noticing that Dick, busy gouging his fingernails with a fork prong, was uninterested in his dream. I'm going to stop there and point out some things that I noticed that I think might be symbolic. Some of the objects in this text, the tree, okay, I think really, if you take all of this together, could be an allusion to the apple tree in Adam and Eve, the story in the Bible. And the tree, he says, smells bad. So that's something negative, which implies something negative and gives it a negative connotation, which I think is interesting. Because again, Adam and Eve picked the forbidden fruit. So there's a connection there. Yeah. And then there's diamonds growing on this tree. And that's sort of symbolic of the apple. Adam and Eve wanted the apple, the diamonds. That's what Perry wants in life. He wants the diamonds. He wants what other people have. Yes. And then there's this snake. That's an allusion to the Bible. Again, the Adam and Eve story. The snake tempts them. But in this case, he's wrestling around with the snake. He talks about wrestling with the snake. The snake seems to be guarding the tree, unlike Adam and Eve. The snake is tempting Adam and Eve. Perry's wrestling around with the temptation. So it seems like maybe that's indicative of him wrestling around in his head, whether or not he should go for the diamonds, even though those diamonds don't belong to him. But I see a lot of allusions here that are used symbolically, allusions to the Bible that are also used symbolically in this passage. And they're sort of making me start to develop some idea about perhaps an underlying message about life in this text, something to do with the theme. All right, so let me continue my reading and see if I can think more about what this has to do with in terms of theme. Dick said, so the snake swallows you or what? Never mind, it's not important, but it was. The finale was of great importance, a source of private joy. He'd once told it to his friend, Willie Dray. He had described to him, the towering bird, the yellow sort of parrot. Of course, Willie J was different, delicate-minded, a stain. He understood, but Dick might laugh, and that Perry could not abide anyone's ridiculing the parrot, which had first flown into his dreams when he was 7 years old. A hating half-breed child living in California orphanage run by nuns, shrouded disciplinarians, who whipped him for wetting his bed. It was after one of these beatings, one he could never forget. She woke me up. She had a flashlight. She hit me with it. Hit me and hit me. And when the flashlight broke, she went on hitting me in the dark. That the parrot appeared, arrived while he slept, a bird taller than Jesus, like a yellow sunflower, a warrior angel who blinded the nuns with its beak, fed upon their eyes, slaughtered them as they pleaded for mercy, then so gently lifted him, enfolded him, winged him away to paradise. I felt like, well, this parent has to be symbolic of something. this parrot's kind of like his God or his Jesus, his savior. The parrot's coming away to save him. So it could represent some escapism or something, has something to do with him escaping his reality. So maybe even something to do with mental illness. It could have something to do with him, I mean, yes, he's being abused by these nuns. So he's waiting for someone to save him or something to save him rather than saving himself. There you'll see this parrot throughout this book as presented as sort of Perry's savior. Yes, he's waiting for that parrot to save him. But most normal people know that you don't sit around waiting for someone to save you. You save yourself. As the years went by, the particular torments from which the bird delivered him altered. Others, older children, his father, a faithless girl, a sergeant he'd known in the army, replaced the nuns, but the parrot remained, a hovering avenger. Thus, the snake, that custodian of the diamond bearing tree, never finished devouring him, but was itself always devoured. That's an important line. The snake was always devoured. So it's like Perry always devoured the temptation and took the criminal route rather than so to get what he wants, the diamonds. Yes. So, and afterward, the blessed ascension into paradise, that in one version was merely a feeling, a sense of power, an unassailable superiority. Sensations that in another version were transposed into a real place, like out of a movie. Maybe that's where I did see it. Remembered it from a movie, because where else would I have seen a garden like that? With white marble steps, fountains, and away down below if you go to the edge of the garden. And again, this garden is being repeated. Garden of Eden. That's where the whole temptation went down. So there's another illusion, which I feel like is important and I need to get at here and mention. Terrific. Like around Carmel, California. The best thing though, well, it's a long table. You never imagined so much food. Oysters, turkeys, hot dogs, fruit. You could make into 1 million fruit cups. And listen, it's every bit free. I mean, I don't have to be afraid to touch it. I can eat as much as I want and it will cost a cent. That's how I know where I am. Okay, so I feel like when I look at all this together, the symbolism and the allusions to the Bible and the symbolism of that, to try to make meaning of it, I think, and to come up with some universal ideas that could possibly be related to this excerpt on pages 92 through 93 of In Cold Blood, I feel like some possible universal ideas represented in this excerpt that could become themes are the idea of the American dream and how it's not accessible to everyone, or that sometimes in order to achieve the American dream, people don't always take the moral route. This passage could be saying something about morality. Yes. It could be saying something about good and evil and the powers of evil. It could be saying something about religion or Perry's aversion to religion, or something to religion and how it affects someone's mind to a certain extent. It could be saying something about the idea of taking responsibilities for one's actions. There's a lot of different things that we could say about this particular passage. Now, your job is to answer the last question on the worksheet. So here's what your worksheet looks like. You've already answered questions 1 through 4. Now you're going to answer question 5. How does Capote use symbolism in the excerpt to illustrate a theme in the book? Okay, so focus in on the symbolism in this excerpt, and then turn one of these, or even something else that you might see, okay, a universal idea, Okay, you turn those into a thematic statement. Okay, all right. So in Cold Blood, on pages 92 through 93, Truman Capote uses what kind of symbolism? What is symbols to illustrate what theme and make it a theme statement? Okay, not just a universal idea, a word or a phrase. I want a whole statement. Okay. All right. Well, I hope the close reading of In Cold Blood has helped you with this worksheet. Um, Thanks for attending my virtual talk today. Hope you are finding the book as interesting as I always do, reading it every year with my students. And we will focus next week on characterization. Keep reading, keep annotating.